I recently traveled to Greece and the entire trip cost me a total of $362.97. And here's how I did it. I'm going to break down into categories the specific costs. Sounded like someone falling up in the room above me. I'm going to break down the costs into the specific categories so that you can really see where I spent my money and why it costs this much. That price includes round-trip airfare, the hotel for 3 nights. I stayed 3 nights on Rhodes. It's an island in the south of Greece. And then it also includes restaurants, tipping, experiences and excursions that I went on, all of the public transportation. So everything cost a total of $362.90-something. I was literally putting it into my notes app every single time that I swiped my credit card so that I wouldn't miss anything. And I do want to foremost say that this is still no small sum of money. Spending hundreds of dollars is something that I feel very lucky that I was able to do, that I was able to use it as disposable income to go to Greece. And I'm so grateful that I was able to go there because I got to experience so much history and culture that I've never gotten to see before. This was definitely budget travel compared to other trips, but it's still a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. There's a very broad spectrum of how much money you can spend on a trip, and the purpose of this video is designed to help you to spend less if that's what you're looking for. Of course, it's a completely good thing too if you want to spend your money and spend thousands of dollars on a trip, because how you choose to spend your money is entirely up to you, and no one should judge you for that. What is going on? I don't know what I was saying, so I'm just going to jump right in. I am going to put this in USD just because viewership tends to be more often from the United States on my channel, so I apologize if the US dollar is not what is most convenient to watch, but I did spend my money in euros, so I converted these calculations to USD afterwards. So this also will be dependent on the value of the US dollar in relation to the euro at the time that I made these calculations. Yeah, so let's break down the costs of my trip. Airfare, I spent a total of $92.64. I flew from Bristol to Rhodes. It was round trip, and this was a direct flight. I didn't have any layovers. My hotel, it was a wonderful hotel. I would really recommend it. It was called Auberge 32. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but it was lovely. The staff were very friendly, and breakfast was included with this price. So I got free Wi-Fi. I had a room to myself, a bathroom to myself, breakfast delivered to me every single morning. And this was $46.64 per night, for a total of $139.91 for all 3 nights that I stayed in Greece. Food, I didn't have to pay for breakfasts because again, it was included in the price of the hotel, but typically dinner cost me around like €8, and then I'd grab a dessert for like maybe €2. Lunches, 5 to 8 euros depending on what I got, and it ended up costing a total of $62.74. And then public transportation was much more expensive than I was expecting. This is also because I did take an Uber to and from the bus station in Bristol because I was traveling at odd hours of the night and I didn't feel comfortable walking back to my room at like 3 in the morning. Public transportation cost me a total of $51.30. And then for experiences, I didn't have to spend much at all on my experiences. A lot of things were free. It was just a lot of sightseeing, going to beaches and stuff, walking places. So I went to a couple museums and things, and the total price of that was only $16.38. And if I traveled elsewhere, then that would definitely be a higher price because some tourist destinations definitely have a lot more charges for the places that you visit. They'll charge you an arm and a leg just to walk 2 seconds into a garden or something, So I was able to save a lot of money in that area. So how can you take a trip for under $400 also? An international trip flying somewhere. I'm going to go over all the ways that I travel cheaply. These are the things I take into consideration, and it might help you out if you're trying to plan a trip and you want to stay under something that's not going to utterly destroy your wallet. What do we have? I did not count these. I have no idea how many tips we have here. Starting off with location that you travel to. The location you might go to might be cheap for you and expensive for someone else. It's all relative to where you are flying out from, or better yet, where you're driving from or taking a train from. Taking the example of Rhodes, Greece. If I flew from the United States, it would not have cost me $90-something to fly out there round trip. It would have been a lot more than that. But another important thing is you do also have to factor in time that you're spending. Even if a flight is a certain price, it may not be feasible because it has like a 24-hour layover. If you're willing to do that, then go for it, but that's not possible with work and school often. So just keep that in your decision. So choose your destination by price, as opposed to saying, oh, I want to go to Morocco. What is the cheapest city in Morocco for me to fly into? And I think this is all just, again, personal decisions. Like in the future, I'd like to be able to say, okay, I'm just going to pick where I want to go and I'm going to pay whatever it costs. But where I'm in school right now and I'm just paying for a lot of my things, for me, it was just the better choice to pick based on the price. I was going to film right now because it was supposed to be cloudy, and I know the lighting isn't best when the sun is directly on me. And it's like I took out the camera and the sun is like, okay, I'm coming out now. Don't just look at the flights, also look at the prices where you're going, because that's the sink. The sink makes weird noises. You're getting to really hear the noises of the dorm life. But yeah, even if a flight, let's say you have two destination options. One is a $30 round trip flight and the other is a $50 round trip flight. You might instinctively want to say, okay, well, I'll do the $30 flight, but maybe the restaurants and hotels at that destination are grossly more expensive than the other location. In this case, it would be cheaper to actually do the $50 flight to that different location. So look at the prices where you're traveling to. That can be a huge factor as well. Make sure you're using the right research methods. Using Expedia, for example, isn't always going to show you the cheapest flights. I used to only look at Expedia and then I was like, wait, why aren't they showing me like Ryanair and stuff? Because Ryanair has a lot better prices. EasyJet, Wizz, those are like the major ones here in the UK that I've seen. My preference is Skyscanner. It's a website, and I promise this is not a sponsorship or anything. I just like to use this website because you can also search everywhere. So you don't have to put in a specific location, and you don't even have to put in a specific date. You can just say, I want to travel in May of 2023. And I want to go anywhere, so tell me what is going to be the cheapest flight to anywhere, which is really helpful. It's also a good idea, whatever tool you do use, set email alerts so you know when flight prices are rising and when they are decreasing, so you book at the proper time, because even just day by day, flight prices can change drastically. Try to pack light. If you do a budget airline, they tend to charge you a lot if you want to bring an extra bag. And if your bag, you show up, and if your bag is like a little bit bigger than the specifications for how big it should be, they might be like, okay, I'm gonna charge you $50 extra, which is really uncool, but I guess that makes sense because it is a budget airline. Be careful with that. Fortunately, it has not happened to me yet. Even things though, like you have to make sure that you've printed out your boarding pass. They might charge you if you show up and you haven't printed that out. Take into account the bare minimum costs that are associated with travel. So if you haven't traveled much, maybe you don't have any luggage yet, or you don't have a passport yet, these can actually be very expensive. Just factor that in when you're making your budget. And also, just so you know, if you are going to fly internationally and you don't have a passport, apply for your passport months in advance. It takes them a long time to process. And if you do it just a little bit too late and you have to expedite your passport, that is also going to be a very steep price that you want to avoid. Travel off-peak for several reasons. Primarily, hotels will be cheaper if you stay at them when they're in their shoulder season or their off-peak season. And then also, excursions will have cheaper prices. They'll often have, like, even weekends might be more expensive than during the week. And then also, I mean, who just doesn't love going to a popular landmark and, you know, you actually have like breathing room. You're not standing shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of crowds of tourists. Once you've arrived, make sure you're doing the cheapest public transportation possible. So this will tend to be the bus system, although trains actually, okay, yeah, you actually have to, okay, this is, so trains and buses, at least here in the UK, it really varies. Sometimes it's cheaper to do a train somewhere, sometimes it's cheaper to take a bus somewhere. I would recommend, if you've got the time to research everything, see if you can even take a bus into one city and then from there take a train to your final destination, or vice versa, because mixing the bus and train methods, you can get the cheapest price possible. Just because certain distances and routes, there might be one method that's cheaper than the other. Typically, renting a car will be more expensive, unless you're traveling with like a large group of friends or your family, then it might be more prudent to rent a car. And then if you can walk to places, feel free to do so. Obviously, if it's an unsafe time of day or an unsafe area, if you've got a disability, if anything at all, definitely pay. Put like your safety first and everything and take an Uber somewhere. Stay in cheap accommodation. Okay, here is where I did not cut corners, because I could have stayed in a hostel and saved more money, but for me, I cannot stay in a hostel because I just value my privacy and my time alone at night way too much, and I would not be able to sleep if there are other people sleeping around me and breathing in the same air that I'm breathing. You know, so if you want to save money, do a hostel. Otherwise, I feel like bed and breakfasts tend to be the cheapest option, because then you do get to have breakfast free. Although be careful, because some hotels will ask you, like, oh, do you want to spend an extra $20 per night to have breakfast included? I find that this is not worth it, because then you could just walk to a nearby cafe if you're staying in a city, and they will have like a breakfast sandwich for half that price. Do lots of research with that. Do it well in advance too, before things book up. It's a bonus if you get a hotel with a fridge. That way, if you have leftovers from supper and you don't mind eating leftovers while you're on vacation, then you can. And full confession moment, I had a meal in Greece where I had leftover spaghetti. I still had like half a plate of it, so I didn't want to throw it out. There was like tomato sauce on it, and I put it in my fridge. There was no microwave in the room. I only had a spoon with me. I didn't even have a fork. And I admit that I had it for lunch the next day. I like chopped it up with my spoon, and I ate cold spaghetti on my bed in Greece, and it was delicious. Kind of like cold pizza vibes. Like, you don't really expect cold pizza to taste good, but it does. That was kind of the same thing with spaghetti. Oh, this is gonna make so many people judge me. Anyway, moving on from that, depending on how much the Epicurean experience means to you, then, you can go shop at a grocery store even. If you're staying several days somewhere, like, I wouldn't want to buy dessert after every single meal because, well, backing up, I am like a dessert after every single lunch and dinner kind of person. So for me, if I'm on a trip that's lasting a while, I don't want to buy like something after every single meal. So I might go to the grocery store, pop in and buy like a box of cookies to have on hand. Saves a lot of money. Do that with any kind of food, pre-made salads, anything. It just will help you not have to eat out every single time. And then finally, make sure you're doing the right activities. There are a lot of free things to do. If you Google things to do in London, England, it might pull up a whole list of really neat things that also cost a lot of money. So make sure you search list of free things to do in London, because those are also really cool things. You might have just as much fun, but you're also spending less. I want to make it clear, like, with this video, I'm not saying like you shouldn't be spending money on vacations, because that's not it at all. Like, this is just entirely designed for if you are wanting to do a trip and you are wanting to cut as many corners as possible. The important thing is making sure that you're having fun, because if you're spending this money and you're not having fun, then spending that money isn't even worth it. It's just keeping that balance. That's all I have for tips, and I am so sorry that this lighting has been doing this the whole time. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.